When I retired from the military, I decided that freedom was what I wanted to pursue. How much work and value do you produce? It was too dangerous for me financially to try to go into that space. You have to consider the money, because if you don't make money, then you can't really do anything. You can't pay people, you can't buy the materials you need, you can't market, you can't pay yourself. If you keep going down that path of what is the problem, what is my solution, what are they willing and able to pay, and you focus on that and that alone, eventually you're gonna find something that works. It was a real challenge, and that's what drove me into the PhD program, to learn more about organization development. I use my introvert power all the time.
What does failure is knowledge mean to you?
Every time you fail at something is giving you information that you can apply to be better.
Okay. Yep, it's good.
All right.
You see yourself?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna turn this off so it doesn't ring. All right.
So we got the room until 2?
2, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll be done about 1:55-ish.
Okay. Okay.
It's not too bright on you, is it?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that actually helps us just a little bit.
All right.
All right, Dr. Russ, I appreciate you for doing a podcast with me. When I met you a year ago,
Right.
I would never thought I'd be here today interviewing you. So I appreciate you for taking time to share more about your story.
Oh, my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So I do want to say that your book is incredible. I read it last night.
Yeah.
You gave it to me a couple months ago. But
Right.
I read it last night, but when I read it, it made me understand more about what you were speaking about.
Right.
So
exactly.
Why business? Why entrepreneurship?
It goes back really to freedom and the idea of what is it that you actually want in your life. And what we're striving for is a particular lifestyle, and everyone's desire for lifestyle is different. And it encompasses more than just activities and family and all those things. It really goes to who you are and what do you consider to be freedom. And for some people, being within a family structure is freedom. But for some other people, they need to be able to move and just be away, so family can tend to be restrictive. So we have to all come up with our own. When I retired from the military, I decided that freedom was what I wanted to pursue, because I didn't have it in the military per se. I had a lot of freedom to do things in the military as an officer, but there were certain things like strategic thinking. I couldn't do that in the military because of the structure. Things like control of my time. If I wanted to take time off, I had to ask someone's permission. Things like how much money I could make. The military caps your salary based on your rank and maybe some other extracurricular hazardous duty things that you do. So I wanted freedom. I wanted those types of freedoms, and the most important for me was freedom to be able to make the decisions that I wanted to make and take action on those decisions. So I tried a few different things. I'm an introvert. I wanted to be in my cave. I wanted to trade options. I wanted to do something on the computer, you know. I wanted to do something that I could stay in my zone and still be able to generate revenue. So I tried a few different things that didn't work. And what I found is that if I was going to take control over something, it would have to be something in the entrepreneurial space. And that's what led me to business. We may get into this a little bit more, but there's a little follow-on to that I will, maybe hit on as we continue the conversation.
Okay, and when I served in the Marine Corps, I was enlisted.
Right.
And I didn't know enlisting and officers have the same issues as far as like time management, because you can't control your time. I remember like being enlisted, I was the highest I got was an E4.
Right.
And I remember like if our whole unit or somebody in the unit does something, everybody stayed the whole entire time. So I didn't know the officers face similar things, not necessarily staying the whole time, but not just controlling your time. Right.
Well, the metric is different based upon promotions. So for enlisted, you have points, and you do certain things that give you points, and you test, and promotions are based on more objective type of criteria for you to move up. On the officer side, it's all subjective type of criteria. Your supervisor or whoever your leader is in your organization writes a performance report on you, and then that performance report gets compared against other officers' performance reports, and that's how you get promoted. So you have to show better, more productive, more capability, more potential than your peers in order for you to get promoted, which means that now it's a matter of how much work and value do you produce. And so some officers would stay in the office until midnight to demonstrate that they were committed.
To midnight is crazy.
And I thought that was the silliest thing in the world. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And it's called FaceTime. You know, you show FaceTime, boss, I'm committed, I'm here, you know, whenever you need me, whatever you need me to do. That kind of mentality that certain people think that that's the formula for being promoted. The more you're there, the more value you have. My criteria was a little bit different. I felt like the more value I produced, the more results that I was able to get for certain things was what I was there to do. And it irritated me to no end when I was pursuing an objective and nobody seemed to understand that if we don't do these things in this certain way, we're not going to get the outcome. And everybody was just posturing and positioning themselves and trying to talk and have the loudest voice. And that just irritated me to no end to sit in meetings like that time after time. And so I often question, well, why did I get promoted when some of these other folks who were putting in so much FaceTime and doing all these different things didn't get promoted? Because I wasn't pursuing promotion. I didn't really care about it. What I cared about was, what am I doing here? How am I being effective here? What is my role and what is my purpose? And what am I contributing to? And why is what I'm contributing to important? All of these things were what was consuming me. And then I went after things in the military that I found to be interesting. I said, oh, if that's an interesting job, I'm gonna go. And people would say, oh, don't go there, you won't get promoted. You know, that's a career killer job. And I'm like, there's no such thing as a career killer job. You either do the job or you don't do the job. And if you go in the job and it's a tough job and it's a difficult job and you do the job, then why would it kill your career? You know, now if you go into a great job where the last 15 people got promoted to full colonel and you go into that job because it's a job where the guys got promoted and you don't do the job, guess what? You're not getting promoted. So this is all my mentality about the whole thing.
So the same mentality that you had in the military, in the Air Force, you had the same mentality with launching your business? Or not launching your business, but growing your business?
And that's the thing. In the military, I only had control over so much because, you know, as a colonel, the general's officers have their objectives and they have what they want to get done. And they also, even though my motivation wasn't to be promoted, we all realize that if you don't get promoted, you don't get the opportunity to do more on a higher level. So the generals were like, yeah, you know, I make a suggestion. They said, that's a great suggestion. However, I'm only going to be here for this period of time. If I don't demonstrate the value of me being in this job, then, and they didn't say this to me, but this was the implications. If I don't demonstrate the value of me being in this job, I'm not going to get promoted and I won't be able to go on and do bigger and better things. So while that's a great idea, we need to do this because this is what's going to show the results that indicate I'm good at my job and I know what I'm doing and I deserve to be here and I deserve to move up. Those kind of mentality was what was within the military. So it was more tactical and it was more operational, and I'm a strategic thinker by birth, by gift, by talent. And I needed to be more strategic in my thinking, so that was frustrating for me. So I said, okay, if I go out and I start my own company, I build my own company, I can be strategic because, again, nobody's controlling my decisions. I have the freedom to make the decision and act upon the decision and benefit from the decision if it's the right decision. If it's the wrong decision, I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to be broke. I'm not going to have $1, but that's the bet I took. I bet on myself.
Ah, okay. As you explained it, I literally thought about what you wrote in your book. That when you get into business, you're getting into business to make money.
That's right.
It made me go back to when we met in Action Zone, and you said the same exact thing. Mm-hmm. When you get into business, you're getting into business to make money.
Correct.
And the fact that you just explained that, it shows that your commitment is not only to the Air Force, but now it's to business, to your business, and helping you grow.
Correct, because there's two aspects. When you go into business, there's two key and critical aspects that you must consider. You have to consider the money, because if you don't make money, then you can't really do anything. You can't pay people, you can't buy the materials you need, you can't market, you can't pay yourself so you can live. I talked about lifestyle. You can't have the lifestyle that you want if you're not making money. So that's important, key, and critical. If you're not making money, your business is unsustainable. But then it comes to a point, well, how are you going to make that money? And this is where veterans come in, because we're mission driven, we're value oriented, we're results and goal driven. And so when we go into business, we tend to put that so far ahead of the money, and we think that the money is going to take care of itself. If we just fulfill the mission, the money's going to come. You know, people are going to pay, but they won't, and they don't. So you have to make sure that the mission that you are going on is fulfilling enough, because if you don't have mission, it's unfulfilling. If you don't have money, it's unsustainable. So you have to have both, and that's where your life sort of attachment to the business, and that's why money is so important. So I say you're in business to make money. I say that so often that it just rolls off my tongue. You're in business to make money. If you're not making money, you're a philanthropist or you're a charity, but don't tell people you're in business if you're giving away your value for free.
Yeah. And
you heard that so much.
So many times. I understand it now. One, when you said it the first time, I heard it, and then when I heard the second time, I'm like, I still heard it. But then when I start doing business and start figuring out what I want to do, I'm like, oh, that's why. Keep saying if you get into business to make money.
Right.
Wait, what would you say? You get into business to make money.
That's right. You're in business to make money.
Right. And it was so hard for me to even understand. Yes. Go ahead.
I'm no different than you, because the first time I sat in the audience and I heard a lady on the stage say, you're in business to make money, I'm like, no, I'm in business to make a difference. I'm in business to help people. I'm in business to make contribution. Right. The money's going to take care of itself. Right. And then after about 2 years of helping people, making a difference, giving value, and nobody paying me, I go, well, you know, maybe she was right. So I emphasize that and I hammer it now, because I understand that it takes people time to absorb that concept and really grasp it, because we are somehow raised and taught that making a lot of money is somehow not necessarily bad, but it's not altruistic. It's not what we should be living for, to make money. We should be doing something bigger and better. And so this idea of just working to make money, people shy away from that, you know. And then the other way is that the way people go about sometimes pursuing money is bad, you know. They'll get the money. If you go after money, and all you want is money, you'll get money in any way possible, which means you may steal it from people, you'll con people out of it, you'll do just bad things to get the money. So people want to separate themselves from being money hungry or money driven. And that's understandable, but you're going to have to suspend that perspective when you go into business and just say, I'm in business to make money. I'm going to make money, but then I'm going to do it in a way that solves people's problems, that makes people better, that helps the community, that grows the environment. If I can make money, I can pay people, and I can help them make their lifestyles better. So now you just have to shift the way you're thinking about how you're actually making that money.
You know how they make movies around like drug dealing, drug cartels, and things of that nature?
Yep.
And when I start learning and really focusing about business and start seeing the outcome, seeing that the difference that it can make,
Yep.
I'm like, why sell so hard? Why is business so scheming, or why is it so difficult to do?
Right.
And so I'm watching all these different movies. I'm like, hold on, I'm not trying to kill nobody. I'm not trying to sell nobody no drugs or anything of that nature. I mean, yes, it's a movie in reality as well.
Right.
Nonetheless, I'm trying to help people.
Correct.
I'm not trying to hurt people. I'm trying to help people.
That's right. That's right.
How did you understand that you were helping people rather than hurting people?
Well, the first thing we think about when we decide to go into business or decide to go into something that's going to help us make money, even whether it's a job or whatever it is, when we think about going into that, we're thinking about it from our own personal perspective. I need money. I knew that when I retired from the military, based upon the cut in pay, I was going to need to replace a certain amount of money in order to sustain the lifestyle that I had already gotten and that my family had become accustomed to. So I knew how much money I needed to replace. And it was all about me. How much money do I need? But nobody pays you because you need money. They pay you because you're helping them solve a problem and you're giving them a problem. And even if we're talking about some of the bad things like drugs, people are addicted to drugs and they need it and they want it and they'll do anything they can to get it. So that's what makes it such a lucrative product, because it's addictive. But me, it took me a while before I started to figure out how people actually do make money in business. What are those foundational things? And a couple of things happened. The first thing was, because I didn't know how to make money, I went into a franchise. And I paid a lot of money for a lot of training programs, doing business with the government, $3,000 for that course to figure out how to do business with the government. And after I took the course, I realized that it was too dangerous for me financially to try to go into that space with the knowledge and experience that I had. So I met this lady from a franchise company, and she helped me take a look at different franchises. I looked at how much money I had to invest into some type of a business, and I selected one. So my first business was in a franchise, because then I was able to use somebody else's products, somebody else's frameworks and systems and processes to learn. And I did that because I didn't know what I had to sell. I was a leader in the military, but how do you sell leadership? I didn't know. How do you sell strategy? I didn't know. I didn't even know that was a thing. So I went into franchise to learn, and along the way, I was in like Business Networking International. I was in Vistage. I joined these different groups that really help you begin to understand how to build and grow a company, referral marketing, and all those different types of things. And I went in there with the intention that, well, I don't know what I have to sell, but I'll sell this person's stuff until I figure out what I have to sell. And that's basically what happened. Is I started to understand. So being in BNI, I started to see how other people were doing business, and seeing those who were making money and seeing those who were not making money, and that just started to spark that sort of insight into me as to what that was. And it became an obsession for me to figure out, why are the people who are not making money when they're doing everything they were told and taught to do. But then as I started to explore it for solutions, I said, okay, if this is the problem, they're not making money, what is the solution that's going to help them make money? And that's when I went into and looked at the statistic, 50% of small businesses fail in the first 5 years. So I said, okay, if 50% fail in the first 5 years, what are the 50% who succeed doing, and knowing that the 50% who fail don't know and don't do? And I started to study those who were successful in making money in business.
And so the people that were making money in business, they started to understand the value that they was bringing to the market, or bringing value to others. And in your book, it says value exchange value, business value exchange value.
Exactly.
And that's what, in your research, that's what you saw, that that the business that failed, they wasn't providing enough value.
No, they were. So then that comes into a different dynamic. So yeah, business is a value for value exchange. If I give you benefit, you should give me compensation in exchange. And sometimes it's money, sometimes it's not money, but those are the things that you need to assess when you're in business. If I'm going and I'm doing this for this individual, how is that going to help me to move forward so we create a win-win situation? Sometimes you have to be the one who decides that, but it's better if you are the one who decides that for the people that you're working with. And say, okay, I need you to do this. I would love for you to do this, and here's how I think this will benefit you. And if that matches, now it becomes almost a no-brainer for two people to do business with each other, especially when you're in a relational environment for doing business. Now, there's transactional environments in New York, different, Atlanta. They're more transactional, but here in Florida, I grew up in a relational environment as it pertains to business. So there's a dynamic in there that, let me stop and say this, back up quick second. What they were being taught was not effective in helping them make money. One of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody says, oh, you want to go into business, the first thing you need to do is write a business plan. Not the first thing you need to do. And if you spend your time writing a business plan, you're wasting time, and it's not going to help you make money. It's not. Because what a business plan does is it tells someone how your business works, how your business makes money, and the potential for your business to make more money. Well, if you don't have a product and you haven't made any money, you haven't sold anything yet, and you don't have a team, and you don't know what the market looks like because you don't know what your customers are you don't know what your customers are willing to pay for and able to pay for, you can't make any reasonable projections in terms of how much money you're going to make this year, the next year, or the next year after that. So it's all fake. And if you don't know anything about being in business and you're writing a business plan that's already fake to begin with, and you don't have the knowledge to even make it sound reasonable, you're just wasting your time. And then people say, take that business plan and then use that as a template to grow your company. Are you kidding me? It makes no sense whatsoever. So what is the alternative? So this is what people are being taught. They're also being taught, oh, you need to go register your business. You need to go get some business cards. You need to get a website. You need to do all of these things that's costing you money, and you haven't figured out yet how you're going to make a dime. It was wrong. What they were being taught was wrong. So what is right, and maybe not what is right, but what is more effective, is what you learned when you came through our program, which is the business model. And the business model says, what is the painful, urgent problem that people are struggling with? And what skills, talents, and abilities do I have that can help them solve that problem? And can I create a solution that is a direct remedy for the problem? Now you have a value for value exchange. I'm going to help you solve that problem, and in return, you're going to give me some money. And then the next most important thing is, what is your pricing? So if this is what people were being taught, then you would see more people be successful in business in the earlier stages, because if you keep going down that path of what is the problem, what is my solution, what are they willing and able to pay, and you focus on that and that alone, eventually you're going to find something that works. Eventually. But if you keep writing business plans, you're just going to keep writing fiction stories, fabrications, and you're going to be frustrated. Now, once you have the business model and you're selling something and you're getting revenue coming in, now you can write a business plan, because you can say, this is who I'm selling to, this is how much they pay me for my solutions, this is how many I sold to last year, and this is how many I think I can sell to next year and the year and the next year and the year after that, because these are improvements that I'm going to make. This is the team that I have. And now you can write a business plan that has validity. That's the difference.
Okay, when you worked for when you was working for the franchise company,
right,
and then you left the franchise company and started your own business, what was so difficult to transition from the franchise to your own business, and how did you do it? Because
all of these concepts that I'm explaining to you right now, I didn't know them then. Right. So I had gone into the franchise and I started to recognize that these small business owners were struggling with this issue, and I started to get this sense of, well, how can I help them? And I started thinking about my skills and my talents, and I'm a very strategic thinker, but I'm also a structure creator. So if I see something that I'm going to do and I'm going to do it multiple times, I'm going to create some type of a systematic approach to doing that thing. I'm always saying, so one of the things that I did, for example, health-wise, I said, okay, I'm going to run as part of my fitness program. So I'm going to run 1,000 miles a year. That breaks down to basically about 3.5 miles a day. So I can now say, if I run 3.5 miles a day, at the end of the year, I'm going to have achieved 1,000 miles. Well, 3.5 miles a day isn't a huge, daunting thing to do, but 1,000 miles, that's huge. But that's the way my mind works, and I do that for everything, even with money. If you want to make 100,000 in a year, you need to do 8,400 a month, 2,100 a week, 300 a day. What can you sell that can help you make $300 a day? And if you successfully do that, you're going to generate $100,000 a year. Now, if you want to do $200,000 a year, you just double it. $300,000, you just triple it. So this is the way my mind works. And so, as I go into the approach and the way that I was coming at this thing, it was that, but I didn't really know those things at that time. So I'm talking to these business owners about systems, and their eyes are rolling back in their head like, I don't want to hear about systems. I don't want to know about process. I don't want to know about programs. I just want to go out there and sell something and make some money so that I could go home and pay my bills and take a vacation, And so I started to understand that my way of thinking wasn't necessarily transferable, so it wasn't a remedy to the problem. And I had to continually search for what was the remedy to the problem. And that took me into organization development, and that took, there was a STAR model that a guy named Jay Galbraith had created that they were using in the corporate setting. I tried to adapt it to the small business, and because of the nature of it, and because of the nature of small business, it was a real challenge, and that's what drove me into the PhD program, to learn more about organization development. And so my dissertation was on organization design for small business, and organization design being intentional and purposeful as opposed to trial and error. I tried to build frameworks that were cause and effect. If I do this, this is the effect. Now, just because you do a cause doesn't mean you're going to get the effect, but if you do the cause and you don't get the effect, you have something, then you can say, okay, why didn't I get the effect? And now you can make an adjustment. And so now, instead of guessing every day when you get up, you can look at, what am I doing today? What is the effect of that? Was it the desired outcome? Yes or no? You can be very methodical and intentional and purposeful about what you're doing. And it took me years to get to the point of where I can explain to you what I'm explaining to you right now.
Okay.
Years.
And I haven't been there the whole years, but what you just explained now, I understand exactly what you said. Basically, based off from what I'm learning and how you put it together, you're meeting me where I'm at.
Correct.
So we're gonna take a pivot right now.
Okay.
So now, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, I'm your client. Like,
Right.
I'm a new business owner launching my business.
Right.
How would you show your expertise to not only discover my problem, but to create a strategy around how to get and find a solution?
So it all starts with you. And it's
Okay.
interesting because I had an individual who said, well, if this is the business we want to go into, how are you going to compete with Small Business Administration, Small Business Development Center, or SCORE, who offer this kind of counseling and consulting for free? And this was the bigger question. And what are you going to do when you start working with people who have a big ego and they don't necessarily want to listen to what you're telling them to do or you're asking them to do? And so those sort of things factored in. So when we work together, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm not an expert in your space. You know much better how to do what you do than I'll ever know, or that I'm ever even curious about. I don't really care that much to do what you do, okay? So, but what I do have is I have this decision-making framework that's going to help you make the decisions that you need to make in order to get your desired outcome. So the first thing we talk about is, what do you want?
What do I want?
What do you want? How much money do you want to make? What type of lifestyle do you want to have?
Okay.
And then, so that's the first thing. Because once you have defined what your target is, now we can start talking about how much work you need to do in order to get there.
Okay.
So, okay, if you want, like I said before, if you want $100,000 in annual revenue, and that's just revenue, that's not how much you want to put in your pocket, that's just revenue. How many items do you have to sell at what price in order to get there? Now we can start looking at what your skill, talent, and abilities are, and how you can use those skills, talents, and abilities to solve a particular problem that exists out there. Now, once you start connecting those dots, now your mind starts going, ooh, this could be fun. Oh, wow. And you start getting excited about doing it instead of, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to make the money. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I can't sell. I don't know how to sell. Sales is simply the process of connecting your solution to someone's problem. That's all it is.
So let's say that my goal is to make $100,000.
Right.
And that's $300 a day.
Right.
And my goal to do that is by helping entrepreneurs launch their podcast.
Right.
So how would you help me go by doing that?
So you have a skill of communicating with people. So Podcasting is not something that's new. The first thing we would have a conversation about is, what type of podcast do you want? What is your objective in creating this particular type of a podcast? And then how are podcasts monetized? How many different ways can you make money in the podcasting space? You can look at advertising. You can look at sponsorship. You can look at having a product of your own and using your podcast to sell that product. You can create a podcast maybe where people pay you to come on your podcast. If you have that much of a reach and people say, oh, if I come on your podcast and I pay you $1,000, that's going to turn into $10,000 or $20,000 for me because I now have access to your audience. Then we start looking at the dynamics of the business model. Before we do that, I do want to talk about two products that I have within Systro Solutions. The first one is a business readiness assessment. Mm-hmm. Now, when we start to have this idea about going into business, we don't know whether or not we're going to be able to do it. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to do it. And there's nothing that helps us determine whether or not we're even ready. So I've created, through my PhD program, I created a business readiness assessment based on 75 business owners who started their companies with zero and went to 100 million in annual revenue. And I looked at what they did in the pre-profitability stage. Basically, what did they do to get ready? And it had to apply to all 75 in order for it to be a valid part of this assessment. And so I have that, and that's one of my marketable products that's available through the website. You just go to the page that says assessment, and you can click on the buttons, and it'll take you to the assessment, and you can take the assessment. Then the second one I have is a revenue strategy development program. And that is also going to be launched pretty soon. It's complete, but I'm setting up the launch program for it. And that's my second marketable product. So once you get done with the business readiness assessment, then you go into revenue strategy development. And that's what's going to show you the concept, help you apply the concepts that I just described about creating that business model that's going to help you make money, so then you can write the business plan and go get people to support you with their money. Okay. So I just wanted to put those two products out there because those are two.
Systro Solutions.com?
Systro Solutions, yes. Okay. Yeah, Systrosolutions.com.
Okay, and then I'll make sure to tag it right there.
Right.
So it come up as you explain it, and then put in the link as well so people can go and learn more about your business assessment and the revenue model as well.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely put that underneath.
Okay.
So best for last segment.
Okay.
First question. Mm-hmm. What are you grateful for?
What am I grateful for? I'm grateful, most of all, I'm grateful for health. Without health, you don't have really anything. You know, you become a burden on your family, you become a burden on society, you feel bad about yourself every day. So I'm 64 years old and I still can get out and run. I'm getting back into playing basketball, and I'm grateful for health, because from that everything else flowers and blooms.
Okay. Next question, what do you regret?
Not really understanding my potential at an early enough age in life that I could apply it effectively to the rest of my life. It's difficult to call it a regret because I really didn't have control over it. It wasn't an intentional and purposeful decision that I made, but there were intentional and purposeful decisions that I made that prevented me from getting on the path earlier. For example, I loved the game of basketball. And when I was in high school, I had such a bad freaking attitude. The coach would say, you need to do this, you need to do that. I'm like, well, so I'm doing this. And I was doing what I wanted to do, whereas if I would have listened to the coach and I would have paid attention and I would have had this sense of mastery over the game. I love playing the game, but my whole goal, my whole life, I was all about being the best I could be. And I defined what the best I could be was. I was recently listening to, another podcast, and they were talking about greatness. And some people, when they are 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 years old, they have this mentality about greatness, and they want to be great. And that puts you in a completely different mentality in all the things that you do. So while I call it a regret, yeah, I wish I would have been able, or even had somebody I listened to. I say my regret was I didn't listen to enough people who might have helped me get on the path to greatness.
Okay.
So that's a regret.
Okay, and then this the third question we even read that you said explained that. What is your biggest lesson in life?
My biggest lesson was understanding personality. The biggest lesson for me was learning what it means to be an introvert and being able to execute on that within the framework of where my power lies. So I took the Myers-Briggs when I was 48, and I started to read about introvert, extrovert, and all of those things that I used to feel were flaws and that people made me feel like they were flaws. Oh, you're not social, you don't talk enough, you're not assertive or aggressive, and all these different things, especially as an officer in the military, you know, all these high-powered personalities, and I'm a quiet person who sits back and observes. And what I learned was that through the Myers-Briggs was that introverts don't speak until they've processed introspectively what it is that they think or know about a particular thing. So we don't just launch words out there for people to hear, and it drives us up the wall when people do that. We have to process first. That's what introvert is, introspective. And it's not about shy or quiet or reserved. We're thinking and we're observing and we're learning. And once we know what we're talking about, we then present as extroverts, because you can't get us to shut up once we know what we're talking about and we feel that what we're saying is accurate. Mm-hmm. So once an introvert understands that, then in many cases, then they start feeling like they've become an extrovert, but they haven't become an extrovert. They simply are prepared. And preparation is the power of an introvert. And if you prepare yourself, you will go out there and you will speak and present with power. You didn't become an extrovert, you just become a well-prepared introvert, and now you're in your comfort zone and you're in your space. So the biggest lesson for me in life was learning what it meant to be an introvert, and now I use my introvert power all the time. In this conversation, does it appear to you that I'm an introvert?
Not even a little bit.
But I am. Because the other part of it is energy as well.
Right.
An introvert can't go into a large gathering in a large group and try to be the life of the party and try to, be super exciting and fun and all the other kind of stuff, because it costs energy. It costs an introvert energy, and we just need to go home and take a nap. An extrovert, on the other hand, gains energy from being in that environment, and they love it, and it pumps them up, and it fulfills them. And so they can sustain that level of energy, but an introvert cannot. So we just have to know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I will tell you, probably about 99% of people, introvert or extrovert, don't know that.
Yeah,
they don't know that.
Yeah,
they just think an introvert is an antisocial little wallflower who needs to be dragged out and beat until they learn how to talk to people and stop being so selfish.
Okay, the last question: what does failure is knowledge mean to you?
That every time you fail at something is giving you information that you can apply to be better.
Okay, hopefully we just caught that last part.
Okay. So
hopefully we did. Hopefully we did.
So you had a timer on it?
No, every 30 minutes it shut off. It stopped recording, then I just have to press record again.
Okay.
So hopefully we got the last part.
Yeah.
If not, that's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
So I do have two more questions.
Okay.
Before the last one, it's called the best for last segment. I'm gonna wait for that one.
Well, let me ask you, is it still recording?
Yeah,
okay.
On the phone it is, but on the camera it just stops every 30 minutes.
Okay.
Because that camera just records 30 minutes, stop 30 minutes, and then you have to press record to start it back.
Okay.
So yeah, I try to change it, but for some reason it won't change.
Okay. Okay, you just need a little button then, right?
That's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up.
All right.
Okay.
Okay,
Second to last question.
Okay.
How can people learn more about the what's the
A small business for service members.
Small business
for service
members. How can people learn more about this book, purchase the book, and start working with you?
So the book is available out there on Amazon. You know, you can just go out there and buy it, you know, through there. And so that's the primary way. You know, that's the main way that you can get a hold of the book. And you can get it both in hard copy like this, or you can get it in a digital form and just download it to your phone, or you know, whatever you use as a Kindle type of product.
Okay, then how can people work with you? How can they learn more about the services that you provide? How can they be more strategic with their business? And how can they find you?
So the first thing I recommend is go out and connect with me on LinkedIn. And it's linkedin.com/in/RC Barnes. So that's where you'll find my LinkedIn program. That will give you more information and background. I like to talk to people who understand what I do, because I'm a strategist. I'm not a coach or a consultant, and they need to understand what the difference is before we, you know, try to get on a phone call, because then I have to take all the time to kind of explain that, and they can get that information beforehand, and then make a decision whether they want to use their time to even call me once they know what it is that I do. So the first thing is just, you know, go take a look at my LinkedIn profile, read some of the articles that I have out there. I talk about basic business fundamentals, which is key and important. That's the first thing. The second thing, you can go to my website, systrosolutions.com, SYSTRO, Solutions, SOLUTIONS.com. And that way you'll be able to then go and get to the contact page, and you can connect with me through the contact page. And then the other way is just my email, Russ, R-U-S-S, at systrosolutions.com. Those are the primary ways to reach out and connect with me. Once you do that, then we'll get on a call, whether it's a phone call or a Zoom call, and we'll talk through the objectives that you have set out for yourself, and how we can collaborate to make that happen.
Okay. Then the last segment, best for last. So I ask 4 questions, and then you answer with a quick response, and then that'll be like towards the end of the conversation.
Okay. Before we do that, I do want to talk about 2 products that I have within Systro Solutions. The first one is a business readiness assessment. Now, when we start to have this idea about going into business, we don't know whether or not we're going to be able to do it. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to do it. And there's nothing that helps us determine whether or not we're even ready. So I've created, through my PhD program, I created a business readiness assessment based on 75 business owners who started their companies with 0 and went to 100 million in annual revenue. And I looked at what they did in the pre-profitability stage. Basically, what did they do to get ready? And it had to apply to all 75 in order for it to be a valid part of this assessment. And so I have that, and that's one of my marketable products that's available through the website. You just go to the page that says assessment, and you can click on the buttons, and it'll take you to the assessment, and you can take the assessment. Then the second one I have is a revenue strategy development program. And that is also going to be launched pretty soon. It's complete, but I'm setting up the launch program for it. And that's my second marketable product. So once you get done with the business readiness assessment, then you go into revenue strategy development. And that's what's going to show you the concept, help you apply the concepts that I just described about creating that business model that's going to help you make money, so then you can write the business plan and go get people to support you with their mony. So I just wanted to put those 2 products out there, because
and
those
they
are
said
2
systrosolutions.com?
Systro Solutions, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, systrosolutions.com.
Okay, and then I'll make sure to tag it right there.
Right.
So it come up as you explaining it, and then put in the link as well, so people can go and learn more about your business assessment and the revenue model as well.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely put that underneath.
Okay.
So best for last segment.
Okay.
First question. What are you grateful for?
What am I grateful for? I'm grateful, most of all, I'm grateful for health. Without health, you don't have really anything. You know, you become a burden on your family, you become a burden on society, you feel bad about yourself every day. So I'm 64 years old, and I still can get out and run.
How was being on Failure's Knowledge podcast?
Well, this was a fascinating experience. You know, you're a very good interviewer, and you kept the conversation flowing. And when you can keep the conversation flowing, as well as tap into a lot of the things that I found important and some messages that I really wanted to communicate, it was fascinating. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
For the next guest that's come onto the podcast, what advice would you give them?
Think about what you want to communicate and why it is that you're actually coming on this podcast. And the fact that the podcast is Failure is Knowledge, think about those things where you actually failed that would then propel you to the success that you have at this point. And just give that some thought so that when you come on and you start getting into those parts of the conversation, you'll be able to communicate what it is that you want to communicate as far as the strength of your message.
Okay, and then last question, feedback. Do you have any feedback as far as how the conversation went, how the flow went, the topics that you wanted to talk about that we didn't have a chance to speak about? Do you have any feedback on how I can be better?
I think you did a fantastic job in terms of some type of area of improvement. Maybe I know you, and I've known you for a while, so we already have a rapport in terms of what you understand about me and what I understand about what you're trying to do. But maybe a little more preparation in some other spaces, because this is a book that I have, and there are other books that I've been a part of, and there are other resources that I have available. And you did ask me about how to get in contact with me, but what other resources do I have that I would want other people to know about? That wasn't a question that we got into too much depth, and I kind of pulled it in there. I said, hey, I have these products. So maybe find out a little bit more about what it is that I'm offering in terms of a product or a service and in specific, and maybe that would be just a little area of improvement. But you know.
Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Right. Okay, hopefully we just caught that last part.
Okay. So
hopefully we did. Hopefully we did.
So you had a timer on it?
No, every 30 minutes it shut off. It stopped recording, and then I just have to press record again.
Okay.
So hopefully we got the last part.
Yeah.
If not, that's absolutely okay.